So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Saturday Talk. We are privileged to have Lieutenant General Dr. Subrata Saha for today's session. A brief introduction about Subrata Saha. He is currently a member of the National Security Advisory Board. Lieutenant General Subrata Saha retired as the Deputy Chief of Army Staff. He created the Army Design Bureau in 2016. Post-retirement, he was the founding Director General of the Society of Indian Defence Manufacturers, that is SIDM. He is a recipient of the Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Vishishta Seva Medal, and Bar, that is twice, COAS Commendation twice, and GOC INSEE Western Command Commendation Card. His in-depth strategic insight is based on his experience as 15 Corps Commander in Kashmir in 2014-15, Battalion Commander in Counter-Terrorism in Assam. He is the only Indian Army officer who is a graduate of both Staff College, Cambridge, UK, and United States of America Army War College, and awarded the Gold Medal at Higher Command course, MPhil double master's degree from Madras University and Pennsylvania, USA. And today he is going to enlighten us on the Kargil warfare. And sir, over to you from here.
Thank you, Rajesh. Very kind introduction. Very, very kind of you. Let me begin with a very warm greetings to all of you. Jai Hind, each one of you who have taken out time to listen to this talk. And of course, I am very, very grateful to Himanyu ji, Hemant and Bhushan who got in touch with me to make this on the occasion of the 24th, as we have seen, anniversary of the Kargil Vijay Divas. So it's very nice that you have picked up this, and in many ways, what JanyuTech is trying to do by being pioneers of robotics technology, by being pioneers of artificial intelligence. I am conscious of the fact that you are also contributing or beginning to contribute to the country's preparedness for artificial intelligence in warfare. And once you will go through this, you will realize how important it is to bring in technology in order to be able to minimize casualties. And it is on purpose that I suggested to Bhushan that make this as the caption, victory on Kargil Heights, by all means, great celebration, great victory, but it came at a huge price and supreme sacrifice. And I think people like you who are working in this field of high-end technology can contribute in a big measure to see that how to make more gains with lesser price. So on that introductory note, let me now start with my talk proper. This Kargil war, actually, I think most importantly, stands out for the valor and sacrifice of the Indian soldier. Otherwise, all of you have seen in one form or the other, I am sure, the treacherous terrain, the super high altitude in which this war was fought. This sort of a war requires absolutely extreme human sacrifice, extreme discipline, spirit of just going ahead to accomplish the mission without questioning, just fighting there for the sake of the unit to which the individual belongs and to fight over there for the sake of the nation. I think this will remain in the history for times to come for the amount of sacrifice that has been made to make this a victory. As far as the background of this whole Kargil war is concerned, most of you are familiar with it. I need not actually go into a lot of detailing, but the important point to understand is, after that inconclusive 1947-48 conflict with Pakistan, Jammu and Kashmir, the borders were never sort of finalized, where both sides stopped. It was at the ceasefire line, which got rechristened and redesignated as the line of control post the 1971 war, with a commitment, which of course Pakistan has never honored, to have the issue bilaterally resolved and not to cross the line of. And I am highlighting this point, not to cross the line of control, because this particular commitment which India has maintained through the Kargil war was actually one of the major factors why we had to pay such a huge price. Now, as we are aware, the whole war was sort of initiated on India by Pakistan. Where does it start? This whole thought process of Pakistan on what they tried to achieve in Kargil. It starts way back in a very interesting address which then President of Pakistan, General Zia, makes in 1998 to the ISI. It was in the month of April 1998, by which time it was almost clear that the Soviet Union is going to be withdrawing from Afghanistan. So that is a time when Zia impresses upon the ISI officers that we have to now work, now that we have succeeded in defeating the strong Red Army or the Soviet Union's armed forces in Afghanistan by utilizing the Afghan Mujahideen. Now it is time for us to turn towards India. And this huge arsenal of arms, ammunition, etc., that we have in our stock out of what was provided to us by the United States and several other countries, out of the financial support that Pakistan had received, he says this is the time to divert it, to create. So when come 1999 and what were the internal developments in Pakistan, I can touch upon it very briefly now. What had happened is on between 11th and 13th of May 1998, if you recall, India had carried out Pokhran 2, the nuclear explosion that we had done. And once that nuclear explosion was done, as far as the Pakistan's army was concerned, as far as Pakistan's military leadership was concerned, now these people, they were very, very clear that we must respond by carrying out a similar explosion in Pakistan. So when India's explosion happened, so instructions were issued to Pakistan's forces that handle their nuclear weapons or who are involved in that process of developing their nuclear weapons. Instructions were issued that you have 2 weeks in which Pakistan must carry out its nuclear explosion. In those days, Pakistan's Prime Minister was Nawaz Sharif. Nawaz Sharif was all along reluctant, but the army chief had already issued instructions for the readiness. He only wanted a sort of a stamp of approval from the Prime Minister. In Nawaz Sharif's view, he thought that why must we carry out an explosion? Because there is bound to be a lot of international reaction. And by which time, a lot of countries across the world were reacting with were threatening and then later on implementing sanctions against India. So which was not something that was lost on the Pakistan Prime Minister. So he thought that the mere fact that there will be so many sanctions and strictures against India, which is good enough. Why should Pakistan have to carry out a nuclear explosion? But Pakistan's military would have none of it. Ultimately, under pressure from them, so Nawaz Sharif sort of gave in and Pakistan carried out the nuclear explosion. But by this time, in this process, the rift between Nawaz Sharif and the Pakistan Army Chief had become pretty wide open. And as you are perhaps aware, after some time, the then Army Chief of Pakistan, Jahangir Karamat, he was removed and Pervez Musharraf was brought in. So the moment Pervez Musharraf came in, he was an old ISI man, a known India hater. So therefore, he picked up the threads from where it was and he on his own decided to revive this old thought process which was there in what Zia was communicating to the ISI officers in April of 1988. So he came out with that same thought process from there and developed it into what came to be known as Operation Badr. And Operation Badr was primarily, the purpose was to infiltrate Pakistani troops across the line of control and occupy strategic positions in the Kargil sector. And basically the same heights that I mentioned, dominating the Srinagar, Kargil, Leh highway. And most of these heights actually were positions that India used to vacate every year during the winters, keeping in mind the severe terrain and weather conditions. We know all about small, big, some 3-man, 4-man, some even section level, some platoon level posts, about 100 plus posts in general, area of Dras, going from west to east, Kaksar, Mashkur, Kargil included in that. So basically, Pakistan employed troops of the Northern Light Infantry and other regulars from the FCNA, which is the Frontier Command Northern Areas of Pakistan, and additional weapons like heavy machine guns, anti-aircraft guns, Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. They were all deployed, and most of the specialized weaponry were actually coming out of the stock that the Americans had provided to Pakistan for equipping the Afghan Mujahideen to fight the Soviet Union. So actually these were resources that were freely available to Pakistan for use against India. So this is what they did from the winter of 1998 going forward. into 1999. So just as the snow began to melt, uh, early summers, or shall we say pre-summers of 1999, the first reports actually came in, and I'm speaking from the ground now. The first reports actually came in from the shepherds, who would be the early ones, trying to take their sort of flock of sheep into these areas, take the herds over there for the purposes of grazing, and also extract some herbs which you typically get at these mountain heights, and bring it down for the purposes of health, trade, and so on. So basically, it is these people who noticed a lot of unusual act which they had never seen, in the past. So it was quite shocking for them to see a whole lot of posts occupied by soldiers, which they could make out was not perhaps the Indian Army. So they came back and started reporting this. And just as these reports started to come, so obviously Indian armed forces were alerted, and then they started sending out patrols to go and ascertain these reports that had got collated from multiple sources, by which time other intelligence sources were also activated. And this is, of course, a much disputed part of the history, where some would argue that there was intelligence, some would argue that no, there was no intelligence, there was an intelligence failure. The fact of the matter is, the intelligence wasn't, I think, as specific enough till such time as it came from the shepherds and patrols were sent out to confirm what was there. And I hope some of you at least, would be aware of that, unfortunate patrol led by one very young officer, Lieutenant Saurabh Kalia. The entire patrol was captured by the Pakistani forces, and if you recall, when these bodies eventually came back to India, all the mortal remains came back to India. These members of the patrol, they were severely tortured, and their bodies were horribly mutilated. Absolutely inhuman manner of treatment of a prisoner by the Pakistani forces. Well, anyway, so by which time it was almost clear that there was large-scale intrusion, there were large-scale occupation of posts, and we started to draw fire every time the patrols were going on. So India decided to respond with full force, what came to be known as Operation Vijay, to evict the infiltrators and reclaim the occupied territories. Let me, for a moment, cover the air operations, because somewhere in this narrative that we hear, there isn't much spoken about the Air Force operations or the air operations that took place in this war. So Indian Air Force had launched what is called Operation Safed Sagar. Operation Safed as in white, Sagar as in ocean, signifying the snow, like an ocean of snow, so to speak. It commenced with a Canberra aircraft, and this took off from the airbase at Srinagar. I had the good fortune of commanding 15 Corps. From Srinagar, this Canberra aircraft took off, flying over these areas, trying to do a reconnaissance mission. So this aircraft was hit by one of those anti-aircraft weapons that the Pakistanis had brought to these forward posts. Again, those Mujahideen variety of weapons, Afghan Mujahideen weapons, which they had got over here. So once this Canberra was hit, it had to abort the mission and land at the nearest airfield. But by which time it was quite clear that it is not only a narrative was, they were trying to build that these are terrorists who have infiltrated across, which was not the case. It was much more than terrorists, because of the kind of damage which was caused to this flight that took place. So the operations were scaled up, and then we started undertaking missions based on MiG-21 and MiG-27 aircraft, operating from the Srinagar Air Base and the other airfield that we have in the other military airfield that we have in Kashmir, the Avantipur Air Base. From these two air bases, the MiG-21 and the MiG-27 were employed over there. And some of you may remember in one of these missions, a MiG-27 aircraft, which was being flown by Flight Lieutenant Nachiketa, was hit. He had to eject, and when he ejected, he landed in Pakistan territory. He was captured by the Pakistanis, and again, here was a case of a lot of inhuman and bad treatment given to this pilot. And then let's come down to the battle on the ground. The Kargil war has witnessed several intense battles, like in those days, Tololing, Batalik, Chorbatla, Tiger Hill. A lot of people who are here with grey hair, these were absolutely household names, and all these places had been given a life which they had never probably have had in the imagination of the people. Suddenly, Tololing captured everybody's imagination. I must mention over here, I think this was the first time when we had such extensive media coverage of the battles. So that media coverage also complemented in a very big way towards winning the, shall we say, winning the information war during Kargil. It also brought to light what Pakistan had done. So with this little digression about media, which I'll talk about at the end, time permitting, let me come back to how these ground operations were undertaken. So now I spoke about the very treacherous terrain. If any of you have had the chance of going over there, in any case, you would have seen it in the various images that have now become so popular. They are very tough terrain. Most places at altitudes ranging up to 16, 17, 18,000 feet. Not a blade of grass, no cover. You're completely exposed. Air is rarefied. And under these circumstances, these operations were undertaken. I must mention here, each one of these battles were covered by heavy bombardment of the 155mm Bofors. I think the one big game changer in this was the Bofors gun, which had that accuracy with which was so much required, to be able to take on these small posts on hilltops and at various places, which obviously some of them were deflated even to the view of the people who were going up. So under these, very considerable, under these very challenging, rugged, inhospitable terrains, extreme weather conditions, I think even a limited window of opportunity, Indian Army undertook the mission and carried it out. Rather than trying to explain exactly how step by step these battles were won, since the battle on, shall we say, Tiger Hill, Tololing are quite well known, documented even in some popular Bollywood movies. So I have chosen another movie, a very short documentary to show you the Battle of Chorbatla. Now, why Chorbatla was significant, you will see it in this documentary, but I will touch upon it once you have gone through this. So I will take a pause now and I will request Bhushan to kindly turn on that short documentary for everybody to watch. Over to you, Bhushan.
There are those who demand respect out of the position they occupy, and then there are those who earn respect. Colonel Sonam Wangchuk may come off as a soft-spoken, light-hearted man, but the charming smile conceals a steely resolve that has shouldered mountains of responsibilities. This is the story of the Ladakhi soldier who attended the call of duty beyond all measures.
Most probably I was in the second year of my graduation when I took this decision. I was physically very fit, a thorough sportsman. I used to go for a run cross country around 14-15 kilometers every day, and I made the choice.
He's always bonded very well with his men. Rather, he's bonded more with the Jawans.
The army is like my extended family, and I don't have any doubts about it. The men, being sons of the soil, they are very hardy, adapted to this place.
At 18,000 feet, the challenge is not just to fight the enemies, but also temporary memory loss, frostbite, and pulmonary edema. Deployed in these conditions, the Ladakh scouts keep a vigil on the borders.
Handang Brok is a place in Ladakh. Two words, Handang and Brok. Now, Brok in the local lingo, it means a settlement, a place where people stay. And Handang is a mentally unstable person. People who are slightly crazy can only stay here.
In March 1999, India and Pakistan signed the Lahore Declaration in order to resolve bilateral issues. Yet, insurgency and attacks continued from across the border. The Pakistan government maintained that these insurgents were not related to the Pakistan army.
But for India, the war had already begun.
The enemy sitting over there was able to interdict the national highway, making movement of vehicles very difficult.
सिक्योरिटी ने करगिल का स्टेशन का लाइट ऑफ करने के लिए कहा था।
लोकल्स को खतरा ये था कभी भी गोलाबारी हो सकती थी,
लेकिन आम जनता भी फौजी के साथ एकदम चौकस हो गया, अटेंशन हो गया आपकी भाषा में कहे तो।
The Indian Army took measures to preempt attack in some critical areas. One of these missions was given to Major Sonam Wangchuk in the awe-inspiring mountain pass Chorbatla.
Chorbatla, it was used as a gateway for invasions by the Ladakhi king.
As per the commander's orders, he took out a patrol to scout the ridgeline on the lookout for any suspicious enemy activity. He set up an Adam base and stationed one of the JCOs, Naik Subadar Tundub Dorje, on an observation post. Right then, the Adam base came upon simultaneous fire from an unseen enemy.
दिवाली की तरह लगता। जब हम शीश लेने लगता है ऐसे आंख बंद कर देता है तो नजर आता नहीं है। मेरे साथ जो रेडियो सेट था पूरा ऐसे डाउन हो गया। दिन भर हम उधर मतलब फंसे रहा, हम 4 बंदे।
Word had to get to the others.
सिर्फ 2 शब्द नीचे वाले को बात हो गया।
कुछ ना कुछ करके आगे सोनम वंगचुक साहब को ये बात पहुंचाओ।
Early in the morning, next day around 10:30 hours, I was contacted by the Adam base and I was told there was heavy small arms and artillery shelling which is taking place. Reinforcement will be required.
Major Wangchuk's enthusiasm was curbed. He didn't receive permission to move ahead, for the enemy and his strength is unknown.
My boys, they are stuck and they don't have any officer there.
By a stroke of luck, his commander came in and paid heed to Wangchuk's situation. He granted orders to proceed.
Wangchuk's war. I understood that time that he won't be coming back very soon.
तो साहब ने हम सबको मोटिवेट किया, उनको बचाने के लिए जाना है।
I took the reinforcement and proceeded, taking the same route which I had followed earlier.
Major Wangchuk was going to get his men home.
I was ambushed by the enemy.
हिलना नहीं, कुछ हिलेगा तो वो पक्का मरेगा। दुनिया भर की गोली आ रही थी, इधर से जा रहा था, आवाज सुनाई दे रहा था, इधर से जा रहा, शिक शिक शिक।
Major Wangchuk had only one thing in mind: the safety of his men.
In a firefight which lasted for about half an hour, I lost one boy, Chawang Rigzin. My father, told me, Sonam, you're amongst your people. They look up to you. I was out in the open, totally unprotected. You always think about your family, though your mission, your men, that responsibility towards them was paramount. When I felt this aggression, when I lost one of the boys, and then when I thought, come what may, his death has got to be avenged.
जमीन हमारा है, जमीन जैसे जिस्म है।
ये हमारी जन्मभूमि है, तो हम यहाँ पे किसी दुश्मन के नापाक इरादे को कामयाब होने नहीं देंगे। तुम्हारे गले काट देगा बोलेगा तो गले पेश करेगा। ले वालों के में इतना हिम्मत है अभी भी है।
Major Wangchuk ordered one of his men to move back to the main body and tell them of the new plan. The plan was a daring one. Despite being under fire, Major Wangchuk decided to outflank the enemy from two ends. The group split into two. He ordered Subedar Shering Stobdan to climb around the mountain, while he led the outflank from another end.
हमारे पास वो अगर आएगा तो मैं कच्चा खा जाऊंगा बोलकर मैंने बताया सर। उसी नाले से सीधा जो न चढ़ेंगे। रेडियो सेट वगैरह तो था नहीं। जैसे आधा रास्ते में हम पहुंचेंगे, तुम लोगों की तरफ मैं टॉर्च जला दूंगा।
Then leaving behind one man with the fallen soldier, he left with another, patiently climbing the mountain in the dark.
तकरीबन शाम को सोनम साहब वहाँ पे पहुँचा। सोनम साहब को मैंने बताया सर फायरिंग आ रहा है, आप अंदर आ जाओ। तो बोलता है छोड़ो। ऐसे मतलब बिल्कुल बेडर था बिल्कुल। तब थोड़ा हमको भी हिम्मत आ गया।
The men at the Adam base were waiting for the right moment to start the climb.
We moved ahead with maximum speed. The enemy kept firing at us.
सोनम वांगचुक साहब बहुत ही मतलब रॉयल ऑफिसर है। उसके अंदर ये था कि अगर चढ़ूंगा तो मैं पीछे नहीं हटूंगा, ऑर्डर देते नहीं रहूंगा, मैं भी साथ चलूंगा। उनके अंदर ये देखा था।
रात को इतना तूफान चला था सर, इतना मुश्किल हुआ था, पूरा गीला हो चुका था सर, सुन हो चुका था।
As the third day broke over the ridgeline, Wangchuk's scouts had the enemy in sight.
यहाँ पर तो पूरा पाकिस्तान के टहने साहब पर।
There is a huge responsibility. We have been trained to guard our frontiers for the land and its people. Don't be a gamma in the land of llamas.
Thunderous echoes of victory resounded in the valley.
तकरीबन 4-5 पोस्ट था,
वो भी पूरा मतलब छोड़ के
उसके गैप से ही निकल गया।
While no triumph is greater than the other, this was a decisive one.
अभी हमारे पास ठोस सबूत जो है वो अवेलेबल था.
With evidence of the presence of the Pakistan army in the forward area.
What you heard right behind you was the sound of Bofors guns.
This win laid the foundation for many more victories that followed in Kargil. Major Wangchuk and his scouts held the Chorbatla axis against all counterattacks for the next 14 days.
Okay, so you all watched this movie. Some of you may have seen it earlier. I just want to highlight a few points with a caveat that this film has been produced by my son Somesh. So my purpose of showing this film was two. One, this I think this film has been shot exactly in the same place where the operation took place. It was quite an uphill task to get the sanctions to be able to film a movie exactly in the same spot where the whole operation took place. It is obviously now with India. And the second point is, I think this entire terrain factor, the climate factor, the weather conditions, etc., comes out very very clearly. And equally significant, but not much talked about, is the support of the local people, the Ladakhi people. That also gets highlighted. After all, when you are trying to support an operation which is as difficult as what it is, you require a lot of support from the local population to be able to execute it. So I think this is also a tribute to that part. You heard what even the monk had to say, like that we would spare no one. So that is how that strong and deep was the commitment which was there. The part is more of tactical or strategic significance, if you wish. Chorbatla, as the name suggests, is a pass. La is a pass. This connects the Ladakh Valley with the Shyok Valley on the other side. So it's a very significant point, very difficult point. I remember as young officers, much earlier than the Kargil war in '86, when we were in Siachen. Soon after Siachen, there were battle plans for going across. And Chorbatla, even in those days, was a very significant point. And time does not allow to go into that. But the place was very, very significant, Chorbatla. So, and most of the people that you saw covered were actual participants, of this war. So you got it almost first hand from them. Now, the other issues, of course, like the kind of equipment that we are trying to procure, is certainly of quality which is far superior with what we have fought at that time. I saw a couple of comments talking about the kind of equipment, their profiling, which needs to change. There is no doubt bulletproof jackets help, but we must not forget the fact that if climbing a mountain at 18,000 feet in this kind of a terrain, even for a person without any equipment, can be tough. Imagine if you have to wear a bulletproof jacket which weighs anything between 9 to 12 kilos, it can be killing. So, whereas the idea is very nice, I am conscious of some very indigenous effort. In fact, I am myself supporting a very good research. In fact, I am mentoring a good research in Amrita University, Coimbatore, in trying to develop a composite much lighter than the current material, bulletproof material that we are using. We have already achieved some success with the TBRL, with successful tests at TBRL Chandigarh, the ballistic research lab in Chandigarh, DRDO. So that, but what I'm trying to say is, yes, we need, again, I am saying again and again, far better technologies to be able to take on such terrain. So on that note, I think I will stop here. Otherwise, there won't be much time left.
Good to see you, General Saha. Long time. And thank you very much. It was a really nice talk. There was one question I had about the very first part when you talked about the Air Force's engagement. So, I mean, I've taken some history, I've read about this, but it somehow never struck me. So, one thing you see, so whenever you see Air Force documentaries about other wars, one thing you see very closely is that the Air Force always acts in coordination with troops on the ground. So there'll typically be a forward air controller or somebody embedded with the forces guiding the Air Force. However, when you look at the timelines for the IF's engagement in Kargil, this was a time when we probably did not have any footholds up the mountains, isn't it? So is it the case that the Air Force was conducting those operations in a very unconventional way without a typical a forward air controller to support them? And do you think that actually increased the risks for the Air Force operating then?
I think that's a very wonderful, brilliant question, Aditya, which you're asking. And one, of course, this guidance and direction, which was so important because, in those days, we did not have the beyond visual range capabilities. Okay. We did not have the kind of precision weapons. We did not have the kind of forward guidance directions that you just mentioned. And of course, this whole business of these joint direction centers, the complete air war, the complete air battles nowadays, this was not there in those days. So therefore, technically, as you brought out, they were definitely fighting a very tough battle, the Indian Air Force, number one. Second, which is most significant, our pilots are known worldwide for their ability to maneuver. I will digress a little. I have done my war college in the US, and one of my faculty members was, I will give his name also, he was Colonel Philip Tissue. Phil was a pilot of the F-16 virtually for his entire career, and he has participated in a number of exercises with Indian pilots. He would swear by the ability of the Indian pilot because of that, innovative maneuvering. He says that we were so dogged and by our, by our processes and what the TTPs that what they call. He says the Indian pilot was operating with a much more freedom. So therefore, with a lesser aircraft, he could outmaneuver us. So in order to do that, if, for example, we had given the freedom of crossing the line of control to the Air Force, it would have been a different story. We would not have required so many 155 Bofors. I mean, the amount of shelling that was required was phenomenal. Okay, and as a corollary thereof, we would not have had so many casualties. So this was no doubt the Air Force had to fight against various odds, some technical odds and a strategic odd of not crossing the line of control.
Thank you, sir. Before we proceed to the formal vote of thanks, I'll just like to inform everyone, since you touched the point of Janu working with these armed forces, we are proud to have received. We are currently working on 2 products for Indian defense. We are one of the proud 2 vendors in India who have been working on a quadruped, that is the 4-leg robotic system through DRDO. The final application of this system is what we understand is for the movement of materials and supplies in this treacherous terrain and bad weather conditions in the border areas. So this is the 4-leg kind of a mule kind of robotic system, which will be supplying to DRDO first of its system in maybe a couple of months time from now. And one more system that is for the NSG. We already successfully tested this surveillance robot, that is Throbot, which is man portable. So these are 2 systems we are already working on closely with the Indian Defense.
Excellent. In fact, my gratefulness to you. I think this is the future of warfare, and you're already there. So nothing could be greater than this kind of contribution for the soldiers and for the nation. Thank you.